Today, we're diving into the story of a 17th century figure who really changed the world. And no, he didn't command some huge army or wield a ton of political power. His main tool was something way simpler, and for his time, way more radical: gentleness.
So here's our game plan for unpacking his incredible story. First, we'll get into why they called him the Gentle Doctor. Then, we'll look at the personal crisis that completely changed his path in life. We'll follow him on a seriously dangerous mission, uncover his revolutionary idea that holiness is for everybody, and finally, we'll see the amazing legacy he left behind.
All right, first up, the Gentle Doctor. To really get a handle on Francis de Sales, you first have to picture the world he was living in. And trust me, it was an era defined by some pretty intense conflict.
This slide just nails the contrast. The 17th century was an age of major religious strife. The standard way of doing things, as you can see on the left, was all about confrontation, force, fear, really rigid dogma. But Francis, over on the right, he chose a completely different path, one that was all about patient kindness and gentle persuasion.
So you have to wonder, how does a guy born into the nobility, with his life all planned out, end up on this radical new course? Well, it all started with a very, very different plan, one laid out for him by his father. Francis got the best education money could buy. I mean, he was sent to top Jesuit colleges, earned a doctorate in law, the whole 9 yards. The plan was crystal clear. He was being groomed to be a major public figure, a lawyer and politician, to carry on the family name. But while all this was going on, a really profound spiritual crisis started to take hold. He became completely tormented by this idea of predestination, the belief that God had already decided who was going to be saved and who was going to be damned. He was terrified, just convinced he was one of the damned, and this inner battle threw his entire carefully planned future into absolute chaos. And this was his turning point. In a moment of just total desperation, he knelt in front of a statue of the Black Madonna. He made a vow of chastity and right then and there decided to dedicate his life to God. In that one single act, he chose the priesthood over the life his family had spent a fortune planning for him. Okay, so let's move on and see how this new commitment was immediately put to the test, because he volunteered for what was probably one of the most dangerous missions you could imagine at the time.
So in 1594, Francis volunteered to go to the Chiblois region, which was a total stronghold of Calvinism. His whole mission was to try and win people back to Catholicism. And over 4 years, the results were, well, they were just astonishing. He's credited with converting thousands.
But how in the world did he do it? I mean, this was not a victory won from a safe distance. He went into hostile territory with just one person, his cousin. He literally faced down assassins multiple times. And instead of preaching from some protected church, he wrote his own spiritual pamphlets and would go around sliding them under people's doors. His only weapon in all this was just his unwavering, patient kindness. Francis's influence didn't just stop with his missions. As he rose through the ranks to become the Bishop of Geneva, he developed a philosophy that would pretty much democratize spirituality itself. His most famous book, Introduction to the Devout Life, had a totally revolutionary idea for the time. He basically argued that you didn't have to go hide away in a monastery or a convent to live a deep spiritual life. Holiness was possible for everyone: the soldier, the person running a shop, the parent at home, even a courtier. And he really put his money where his mouth was. As a bishop, he worked tirelessly. He reformed his clergy. He educated regular people. He traveled to the most remote parishes. He helped the poor. He co-founded a whole new religious order, the Visitation Order, for women who weren't suited for the harsh life in other convents. And he even took his message of everyday holiness all the way to the royal court of France.
So finally, let's take a look at his enduring legacy. How did his story end, and why is his influence still felt so powerfully hundreds of years later?
Francis died of a stroke back in 1622, and he was pretty young, only 55. But his impact was so massive that the church moved fast to recognize it. He was beatified, then canonized as a saint, and eventually he was given the very rare and high honor of being named a Doctor of the Church. And this, right here, really gets to the heart of his legacy. He's the patron saint of writers and journalists. And when you think about it, it makes perfect sense, right? His entire life's work was about clear, patient, and loving communication. He used the written word not as a weapon, but as a way to connect with people, making him the perfect model for communicators everywhere. And that leaves us with a final thought. We look back at this guy from the 17th century who faced all this division and hostility with just quiet resolve and kindness. It really makes you wonder, in our own world, which is so full of noise and anger, Is it possible that the simple act of gentleness isn't a weakness, but maybe the most radical and powerful approach of all?